We are not talking about an actual village, a residential village on the moon.
And of course, the easiest reason is because it's just cheap. It's just much cheaper.
Antonio is an expert in a lot of things.
I should ask my brother to do it. I should really. No, I'm not. No.
I was about to point that out, Antonio. So that's the first important point
Yeah,
that
sorry.
you're very sensitive.
In this economy, in this era, you can be a businessman, you can be an artist, you can be a policymaker. You have a chance. You have space in the space sector. So.
I mean, what are you guys waiting for? Just sign up, right? Go for it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season 2, episode 10 of Smurfs, a podcast where we mostly discuss about space stuff, but we also end up rambling about a range of other topics from K-pop to NFTs. This is your host, Aleena, the potentially spaced out space person, and
this is your host, Pooja, aka the Wandering Stargazer, and we hope you're having a good day. For all those who are joining us today for the first time, we are the podcast team of the Asia Pacific Oceania Space Association, or APOSA as we like to call it, which is a sustainable space community development initiative at the Asia Pacific level. Through Space Smurfs, we are bringing to you different types of space topics wrapped up in a lot of fun and laughter.
Exactly. And Space Smurfs is not just for the space people out there. It is also for all the amazing people who are curious to know more about what is happening in the space industry also. Well, with that being said, Pooja, I bet you know that about this, but for the audience, what is happening on July 20th? Is it a special day for the space community or something?
Oh yes, Aleena. So it is indeed an important day for all moon lovers like me because we celebrate the International Moon Day on July 20th. And that is basically to celebrate the first man landing on the moon on that day. But since it has started, we have been celebrating the Moon Day with different activities. One of the very popular ways is to keep telescopes outside on the street and on sidewalks and show people the moon from the telescope. It's just a way to celebrate our moon and celebrate the special day where humanity kind of made a small step and a giant leap to reach there.
Wow, that sounds so awesome. And to our audience, do you guys know that there is something called the Moon Village Association, the MVA? Yes, you heard it right. And it's not something like a village association for the humans and the extraterrestrial life forms out there, but it's something more. And don't let your imaginations wide open now. Just keep it there for now, please. And today, for the 10th episode of Space Smurfs, we have two amazing guests from the Moon Village Association to talk more about what is MVA and the International Moon Day celebrations that they are doing. So we have Bernadette, who is Implementation Support Officer, and Antonio, who is East and Southeast Asia Regional Coordinator of Moon Village Association. They are also currently taking several other positions within the space domain, so you might know them. And they are also doing a lot of work with the Space Generation Advisory as well. And I'm so glad that we have them today on board. And hi to both of you. Welcome aboard.
Hi, Pooja. Hi, Aleena.
Hi.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, and so I might also want to remind the audience out there that Antonio was our expert Smurf on season 1 as well. And so happy to have you here as expert again for season 2, Antonio.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be an expert Smurf. Smurf on.
Yeah. Antonio is an expert in a lot of things.
Oh, I'm sure. And I think we must, Aleena, remind our audience that there is a wonderful opportunity that they have to interact with both of these experts in person on Saturday, that is the 23rd of July at 6 p.m. IST on Instagram, on our Instagram ID, which will be shared in your description box for yourselves. It will be a wonderful opportunity for you to ask questions directly to Bernadette and Antonio about all their work as well as opportunities that you could perhaps participate with them. So I think without much ado, let's let the smurfing begin.
Exactly.
All right. My first question is something that I actually want to ask the both of you. As someone who is a moon lover herself, I wanted to know more about the Moon Village Association, like maybe an overview of what all activities you do, what events you do, and how can people like us be a part of it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I really like to take that up because I think not so many people know about MVA or have heard about MVA, but this is really an amazing organization. So officially, it's a non-governmental organization, which is established in June 2017. So it's not that old, but it's still fairly young in the space domain. So we are, like I said, a non-governmental organization supporting the United Nations, and is also a member of the IAF, the International Astronautical Federation. And essentially, so from the name itself, Moon Village Association, so Association of a Moon Village. So by Moon Village, I think this is where a lot of questions would come in, like what exactly is a moon village? But I like to assure everyone, we are not talking about an actual village, a residential village on the moon. That's not what we're talking about. We're also not talking about another ISS, the International Space Station. But we are talking about the more general approach of the moon village being a community, like a lunar community, doing peaceful and sustainable activities on the moon, utilizing its resources and all of that, in accordance, of course, with all the relevant space laws that we have. But that general concept of promoting sustainable lunar exploration and all of those activities. So essentially, the MVA is the community trying to make that into a reality. So I think that's essentially what MVA is.
Wow. Antonio, over to you. Like, what do you think? Like, is there anything that we missed out from Bernadette?
Mhm.
Bernard gave an excellent overview of the MVA. As Bernard mentioned, it is an non-government organization. And MVA, we do a lot of things. Some things are more research-oriented, where we try to look into what will come into the Moon Village. That is not just, as Bernard said, it can be anywhere from an actual architectural type of study of trying to build the Moon Village to the more socio-political agenda and issues that we might encounter. Like the village term can use either as a physical village structure, but most times it's used as an encompassing term for what will happen with multinational and multi-sectoral entities that are trying to live on the cislunar space. So not just in the lunar surface, but in the cislunar space, and they don't have to be like permanently there, but more in the different activities of habitation, of resources, economies that will happen on the moon. MVA trying to spearhead some studies and cooperation in that sphere, because trying to get as many different perspectives as possible from different fields is integral in trying to have a long-term vision on how the moon economy and the moon society can be developed for the future.
Wow,
Right. And I
that's
think yeah, and I think to add to that, so Antonio already mentioned an overview essentially of the working groups. So I think in your question as well, like how can you get involved? So really one of the most exciting ways to get involved is to join a working group. So within MVA, we do have working groups that are both, serious technical ones, but also there are less serious um, social science oriented aspects of lunar exploration. So for the technical ones, let me give you an idea. So I think one of the most active working groups is the architecture working group. So it's talking about research and development of how what kind of architecture are we talking about when we are thinking about the long-term presence of humans on the moon. What kind of scenarios could possibly happen, and what are the technical building blocks that we need to further develop in order to achieve that long-term presence on the moon. So I think that's one of the most exciting working group if you are really into that. There's also working groups on analog missions, and also there's a lunar commerce and business. So they're also trying to come up with some studies on what would the moon market look like, how big it will be, and so it's very interesting. And also on the less, technical side, so we do have cultural considerations working group. So for example, if we are staying there for long, so people are going to be living there, what are the cultural implications of that? How should we define, how should we, let's say, for example, how are we teaching the children who will be born on the moon about our life here on Earth? So like those kinds of questions we also need to consider. So that working group is really trying to dig deeper on that aspect. And yeah, we do have outreach working group as well. The PESC, I think, which we will talk about later as well, and also a working group on the younger generation, which is called the Towards the Moon Village generation working group as well. So a lot of exciting groups.
Wow,
Exactly.
that is amazing, isn't it, Aleena? I mean, I think I'm going to, after the podcast, jump onto their website and check on and sign myself up on some of the working groups. I don't know why I haven't done that till now.
Yeah, and Bernadette, you were mentioning that some of the working groups were a little more serious, but I feel like it's both serious and interesting at the same time, which I think every things in space, I mean, every topics related to space is both fun and serious at the same time. But MVA, when you were describing the working groups, I feel like, wow, I mean, this is such a great opportunity for the people out there to get involved. And I mean, what are you guys waiting for? Just sign up, right? Go for it and go to the working groups, interact with them, and who knows, your ideas will be taken in future. And I really like the idea of why we need an MBA, like for the future, right? We are researching and trying to find solutions for the future possibilities that will be happening, right? And it's so nice to hear a lot about it, and which goes to my second question. Why are we thinking about a colony on moon? I mean, what is the purpose and benefit? Like I've heard people wanting to go to Mars. Yes, Elon Musk. And then I mean, it makes sense moving to a bigger planet, but a moon which is comparatively way smaller than Earth, like what is the whole idea about it?
I can take this up first. So the moon is we try to, and we also don't say colony because that does have some cultural aspects. So we try to say settlements. And we try to build settlements on the moon.
I was about to point that out, Antonio, as well. That's the first important point
Yeah,
that
sorry.
we're very sensitive
Yeah.
about.
We are really sorry.
It's actually something that I wanted to talk about anyway during at some point, because a lot of people have been using the term like lunar colony in previous literature. It's just that again, one of the things that we do at MVA is to be mindful of cultural differences and like cultural histories in different countries, and the word colony is usually not positive. So the most of the cislunar ecosystem personnel has moved into talking about space settlements, because that's more akin to what we're trying to build on the lunar surface. So we try to go to the moon, we try to go back to the moon and stay, as the Artemis project frequently says, because for a variety of reasons. The previous missions, the manned missions to the moon, were the Apollo missions, where they're only there for science and research. But now we're not just going for science and research, we're going for economic development and also for actual manned exploration to the moon and beyond. And you already mentioned that we are very interested in going out to Mars and to the outer planets. The moon will be a waypoint for that, if either not on the surface. We For example, the Artemis Gateway project is not on the moon, but it is an orbiting station around the moon, but it will still serve as a waypoint for refueling, for the crew to take rest, for resupply, for the crew to actually transition into different types of spacecraft, et cetera, et cetera. And also the moon is a great place for us to test out a lot of new technologies because it does offer some stunning environments that you cannot have the ISS. ISS, while it does have microgravity, it doesn't have the same level of like radiation or protection from different light that limits certain observations to take place, some deep space experimentation, some human or biological experiments. So that will all be able to be done on the Lunar Gateway or on the lunar surface. And there's a lot of projects that we're doing out here. If you're looking on the close side of the moon, basically the side of the moon that is facing us, that's where we might have one human settlement. That's because it's just there, very visible. It'll be a kind of an economic waypoint for us to travel to the moon and back. We're also looking at the different lunar poles because we know that there are ice caps there in the permanently shadowed regions, and ice is actually a very valuable commodity out in space because you can you can like melt it for drinking water, for potable water, or you can split them into hydrogen and oxygen to breathe and hydrogen as fuel. We also have the far or the deep side of the moon where you can where the deep side or the far side of the moon, because it is shielded from the various different types of radio communication coming off Earth, you do not have those radio disturbances, which means you can create a deep space antenna to explore the deep space without the interference coming off from Earth. So there's a lot of science and research and opportunities available with a human settlement. Another reason is that it can serve as a political checkpoint, because it is a lot of times we view Antarctica and the Arctic or the maritime as a neutral zone for countries to come together and for the true international collaboration to take place. And we viewed the moon to be a symbolic place, another symbolic place, a true new frontier for humanity to kind of realize how much more we are similar than we are different, to try to come together to go for endeavors that really unite us as a single species. So those are all the different regions, the reasons why we're looking into the moon. And of course, the easiest reason is because it's just cheap. It's just much cheaper than trying to go to Mars or like any other planets.
Yeah, and I just love
that is so true. I mean, first of all, yes, analog missions. That's why we really want to use the moon as an analog, as a test bed for future Martian missions. And also really it's also the space mining as well, really the resources on the moon. So there is really a lot of potential and opportunity for that, essentially to make money. And also, of course, our resources here on Earth are depleting. So many private ventures are really looking into that aspect of it. But yes, generally, as Antonio mentioned as well, it's really a sort of political imagery as well. That is really, the moon is our next frontier, and we are really doing it. We're really doing it soon, and we know nothing can stop it. So it's so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I just loved how you guys have structured the whole of the answer, like starting from why we should not call it the colony on moon, and rather than mention it like something like settlements on moon or villages, or like moon village itself, right? Yeah. So from there to why the moon is being used. And when you were talking about using moon as a rest stop, that's the only thing that I actually kind of was relating to. Like when we go to a destination, you have rest stops in between, like in one place or another, and moon can be like something of like that sort. And then moon can also be considered as a neutral domain where all the countries will have equal opportunities rather than having any political upper hand or hegemony or anything of that sort. I mean, it sounds super cool. And I really, really wish that I would be able to see whatever that happens with this moon village in future. Like, I really hope that it happens really, really soon. And it goes into my next question, like, how are we going to implement this properly? Like, as any other project or mission that we have, it might have some challenges, right? Like either it can be any actors or any other technological challenges, or let's say like even coming to the law and policy, like with regarding to space mining itself, there are a lot of debates, like heated debates happening here and there. So according to MVA, how do you guys think that we can implement a moon village very sustainably? Yeah.
Right. So let me take that up first. So I think so I mentioned earlier the working groups that we have, but another important side of MVA is what we call the GEGLA. So it's GEGLA is it stands for a Global Expert Group on sustainable
Lunar
activities.
activities.
So yeah, from lunar activities. So essentially, that is really what it tries to address. So if you notice, there are so many countries launching lunar missions, and even just recently, we had NASA launch the Capstone project, the Capstone mission. So that's one. But essentially, a lot of people want to go back, go to the moon and launch their own mission. But of course, there could be, we are forecasting some problems there. So for example, one problem is that everybody's going on the same spot. So on the south pole of the moon. So of course, like that can cause some traction so within them, and so we really need as early as possible. We really need to come up with, let's say, a global not necessarily a standard, but at least an understanding on how we can sustainably do our activities there. So this GEGLA within the MPA is trying to address that by doing research and consultations with several stakeholders, and they try to come up with, let's say, best practices or suggestions on how we can actually do that, and recommendations. And these are also being presented to the United Nations, because MVA has an observer status at the UN COPUS, and so it's an ongoing initiative. But that group of experts really are trying to consolidate it and continuously publish some of the best practices on how we could do exactly that.
Amazing.
That is amazing. I feel like a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing is also cool. I might be seeming like I'm silent, but like I've been personally making notes. Okay, read more on this. Join this, do that. So I feel like there's so much that we are gaining just with this interaction, and I'm sure the audience is going to be enjoying as well. That has all the questions Aleena has been asking has led me to my next question, which is, we always do now make sure of two very important words, which is things to be peaceful and sustainable, right? But ensuring that things are peaceful and sustainable is not as easy as we would want them to be, especially when it comes to, making things sustainable. I think we have to question ourselves because we're just kind of set in a pattern as from years of the way our industry works. How do you think can we ensure that when we do settle on the moon, we would be able to ensure that it is for peace and it is sustainably?
That's a hard question, and the easy answer is that we can't ensure anything, especially in international politics. We have tried to do so in the Antarctic and the Arctic zones. The Antarctic is relatively being used peacefully for research purposes, but there's still a lot of sideways eye glazing about how the Antarctica is used, like what research stations are positioned, et cetera, et cetera. The Arctic is not a war zone, but it is very similar to war zone. There's a lot of disputes, and even if it's not the polar areas for the international maritime seas, there's still so much conflict about the freedom of passage between different lanes, about what activities, especially how can resources be utilized or exploited in these regions. We will still have the same type of we will still have the same difficulties on the moon as well. There will be difficulties about who has the rights to mine lunar resources. There are multiple countries already that recognize the right of different private or non-private entities to own resources on the moon. But again, that's the legal interpretations are still upcoming. Like, is it how much you can claim, or is it how much you can reasonably process and acquire and store? And even if some countries recognize that right, how does that hold up in an international court and international legal system? And a lot of times international law and policy are not as powerful as they seem to be. Just because something is written into a treaty, it doesn't mean that they're enforceable. Like, a lot of times countries need to sign them, and then they need to ratify it. And even if after they ratify it, they might just revoke it. They might unsign the treaties, etc., etc. Law and policy are very fluid things, especially for these fluid dynamics. And it's all about what countries have powers to enforce this, and usually the countries who have the power to enforce stability are also the countries that have the power to usurp and disrupt that peace. You will usually find that the countries who say that they're the vanguard for peace are also the ones that is also developing technologies that can be used, that has dual use purposes, that can be used both civil but also militarily. So there's not one way we can ensure, but one thing that we're trying to do, especially at MVA, is to try to come up with an international consensus. So that's what we that's what we usually say in international relations, that we try to build an international consensus of what are the norms and the standard operating procedures for operating in this region. So there's no enforcement, but that's what we usually do, is that we can indemnify certain countries when they do activities that we believe are outside the international international norms, and that is what we're trying to build. And the whole purpose of an organization such as an MVA is to try to have as many stakeholders as possible from multiple countries, from different fields of economics, of sociology, of law, and science and technology to come together and try to figure out what those norms can be. Because these norms, while not legal, are still the most powerful instruments and values that we can have in an international community. And these are the things that we can really present towards. So that's what we're trying to build at organizations such as MVA. That's the reason why that organizations such as MVA are so important at this particular timeline in trying to develop a lunar economy and a lunar international system.
That is really insightful. I think there's a lot of food for thought in
actually. Exactly. And the thing is, like, I totally resonate with what Antonio was mentioning about how the politics works. Like, there are a lot of actors getting involved in moon these days, and it becomes a little tiring sometimes, because when you think that you have reached an almost consensus, there might be some issues somewhere. Some other country will create an issue saying that, okay, this is not interpreted in this way. We want it to be interpreted in this way. And then it will be a heated debate, and that's how we have been seeing all these debates and different sessions at the UN caucus and UNOSA and all, right? Like, that's why still space is still a, how to put it, like, it's still a competitive domain where different actors are trying to gain something and some actors are trying to pull down something else. And but the interesting part was
definitely everyone has its own agenda in the end, and even in space, and it's really not easy. And even with Artemis Accords, and there are also issues, let's say that in Artemis Accords, actually the emerging space countries who do not have any lunar missions whatsoever are not, included in that dialogue. But then, of course, they are also a stakeholder in that in the future. So I think, it's like you said, it's still quite messy, and it's really challenging. But it's really challenging. But
and
actually, in fact, Aleena, that's exactly my point was, like, it's so difficult for us as humanity to reimagine these concepts because we are so used to having boundaries. And the moment we go in space, the concept of boundaries does not exist. So, the management, the administration, everything that we have in mind is so ingrained and like so thought through in boxes that it's a little challenging for us. It does push our thought, I think, in terms of like thinking beyond and thinking in terms of space, because it's not ever going to just affect one person. It affects everyone when it's out in space. It's not one country's onus, it's everyone's.
Yeah, exactly. And like as always on every Space Mouse or podcast, I have something or another to tell about K-dramas. So I think like the dramas that you see on virtual, like any drama, not just K-drama, any drama, the kind of drama that if you want to get entertained in real life, just listen to the politics. I mean, you might find it a little sensitive, but sometimes you just have to let it go of that part and just listen to how countries act. Like consider each country as an actor or a person. Just think about it. It's so fun actually to listen. So we will move on to the next question, and that is to Bernadette actually. So the Space Mouse team, we found out this interesting project by the Moon Village Association that is regarding the participation of emerging space countries project. Like you mentioned, like even in international treaties or contracts like the Artemis, there is a division when it comes to emerging and already existing countries who are doing a lot of work in the space, right? So how do you think these emerging space countries can join this race and contribute to whatever they can do at the moment?
Yeah, so this is really, so as I mentioned the working groups earlier, but this is one of the most active working groups as well. So again, like we've been mentioning, we're talking about sustainability, right? And we at MVA, we really recognize the importance that we involve us early on these emerging space countries. And so these working groups are this task working group is really trying to address exactly that, which is to help that country tailor fit a, let's say, roadmap of their own for their own country on how they can get involved and what kind of lunar missions would be more suitable for them and would be beneficial for their own country. So it's a tailor fit approach. So the idea behind this working group is to invite these emerging space countries and invite a team from that emerging space country. And then we at MVA, we will provide some mentorship and some workshops with them. And the final output is essentially a roadmap of how are we going to do this? How are we going to approach our stakeholders within our country? And how are we going to get involved in the lunar exploration scenario? And so that is really the main goal. And we started this 2 years ago, and now we have around 10 countries participating. And it really the question of how really depends for each country, because even if everybody is emerging, we still have our own unique needs and political scenario within our country, and we might have a different sets of stakeholders. So with this working group, it's really a matter of tailor fitting your own roadmap to the moon, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, it actually sounded so nice. And for me, again, I'm kind of relating it to things like it felt like a training program or a crash program for the countries to get involved and to get know more, like what can we contribute to this project or how can we do. And like you've mentioned right now, like it depends again on the country's decision, what they want to do, right? Like even after doing the training course, it's up to us how to channel whatever that we learned on our career, right? So I think it's really cool what MVA has been doing on this part. And 10 countries in 3 years, wow. I mean, getting countries on board, I mean, people from them, the countries, it's so great and awesome. I mean, right, Pooja?
Absolutely awesome. I was in fact thinking that, it's not just, having the technical skills and thinking through how to set these things up. It's also a lot of creative thinking as to how to do it in newer ways, how to do it more inclusive. And there are so many different factors they're kind of, keeping in mind while doing this, which I think is just phenomenal. In fact, that is bringing me to my next question, which I think is for Antonio. He might be the best person answering this. That I think there must be a lot of different regional programs as well within MVA. If you could tell us a little bit more about that, especially for the Asia Pacific region, and how could the Asia Pacific region benefit directly from these kind of programs that the MVA has? We would love to know more about that from you.
Right, so MVA is very much it has both a top-down portion and a bottom-up portion. So in the top-down portion, you have the different working groups at the MVA that are intersectional and interdisciplinary, try to focus on like particular topics that are very long-term ranging. The bottoms-up portion of MVA is relatively new. It hasn't been that long since since we started recruiting regional coordinators and national coordinators. So it's still very new, and our new initiative, the International Moon Day, for which we are airing this webinar, is actually one of the first key milestones, and we're really trying to garner up the grassroots movement from the different regions. So already for the Asia Pacific region, we don't actually have to say the Asia Pacific region, we say East Asia and Southeast Asia region for the region that I am a representative for. I do believe we have 2 to 3 events scheduled for IMD, and that will just get started, because what we're trying to do is that we're trying to get a lot of stakeholders and these regions to become interested in MVA, in the mission of MVA, and see what they would be up to. It's all about what they're interested in. We are trying to build that funnel in getting a lot of these, in recruiting a lot of these members into long-term research projects that are our working groups, and see how that can be, but also trying to do more public outreach programs so that we can talk more about Moon Village, because as I said, Moon Village is only valuable if we have enough stakeholders and constituents from a lot of different sectors. Like, we don't want this to be just another organization that is just filled with scientists and engineers. You want as many sociologists and designers, policymakers to come into this organization, really talk about what the Moon Village should consist of. We do not want this to be another technocrat engineering work, because there are other organizations out there that does that much better than us. We are trying to be more the collaborative, cooperative, internationally culturally aware organization, and public outreach is our avenue of choice for that.
Yeah, and I just really love the way how MBA functions. Like, just by listening to you both, like, how inclusive MBA is, and also how culturally aware this organization is trying to be as well. The terms you have incorporated and the different activities you guys have been doing, and it's really, really insightful. And to the audience out there, so Aposa is also collaborating with MBA IMD celebrations this year, and by this time I think the registrations might be closed. If it's not closed, I will definitely link it down on the description below. But nevertheless, to all the audience, the participants who have registered for Aposa's workshop, and also there are other workshops with Space Smurfs as well happening on July 20th. So all those audience out there who are listening to this podcast and also have registered for the workshop, I hope you guys enjoy the International Moon Day celebrations by MVA, and get to get the best of the workshops and everything. So with that, we will move on to the final question, right, Pooja?
Yeah. And absolutely. Before that, I do want to respond to Antonio's answer, which I think was really beautiful, because he said how it's not just scientists, but bringing together so many other different disciplines together. And that kind of an interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach, I think, is so important when we're looking at creative solutions and trying to build something which is so different and beautiful. So yeah, that's great. And I feel really glad about it, being an Asian and being someone from an arts background who is studying outer space politics. So I feel like I feel like these are the kind of places we would need more and more for people like me to feel, that we belong in space and in the community in general. But coming to my last question, which is to both of you, more to say, like, we know that the International Moon Day celebrations are coming on, and I am really curious to know about what is the big and mega event that MVA is planning this year for the International Moon Day. So if you could tell us more about the events or events that you have planned up, we'd love to know about them.
So I think let me just refresh everybody of what IMD is. So it's the International Moon Day, and it's the first time that we are ever going to be celebrating a day dedicated to the moon. So it's going to be on July 20, and it's this official celebration was approved by the United Nations just last December. And again, this is the inaugural year for IMD. So we're really excited to officially launch this with everybody from all over the world, and with IMD and with the MBA. So I think Antonio mentioned already, but we do have a top-down and a bottom-up segment. So for the top-down approach, so for this, we have a set of events, which mainly comprises of keynote speeches and exciting panel discussions from all over the world, from high-level speakers from all over the world, and it will be broadcasted live during July on the day itself, on July 20.
Okay.
So we haven't released the details yet, but please stay tuned on the website for that. So it's completely free. You can watch it from anywhere here on Earth, anywhere on Earth. And also for bottom-up events. So this is really, really exciting. So this is where we invite anyone, literally anyone, any organization to come up with their own event and celebrate it with us. So this the type of event can vary from technical ones, and again from not so serious ones, like a moon festival, which is what Antonio's team is working on. I'm sure he will mention it later on. But so we do have a lot of exciting events happening all over the world, and you can also check our website for that. And I think Antonio, please share your exciting events happening.
You want me to? So I am
Yeah.
currently organizing the International Moon Day event in Korea, which we are, of course, calling it the Korea Moon Day event. We're actually hosting a nationwide competition called What If? For Marvel fans, you might, and there's a lot of Marvel fans in India. Marvel fans, What If it's a Disney series about what if something will happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or something will happen else. And we're taking that same concept but applying it to Moon Village. What if something happens in a Moon Village in some future? What happens if someone accidentally dies and someone's at fault and it's someone else? What happens if an astronaut from a different country is in danger and you are in a position to help them? Are you legally required to go help them? You actually are. There's an international, the Outer Space Treaty does require to go help any other astronaut in trouble. It doesn't stipulate how much, like how much do you help them? There's no limit. So we will be giving out these topics to students and young professionals, and they will come up with a scenario. Like, we simply give them the topic and they will come up with a realistic scenario and a presentation of what a future Moon Village situation would look like given this topic or issue. So that, and hopefully we're looking into like, we will also be selecting winners. We have a bunch of panel judges that we're waiting. Sneakily, we might actually have an astronaut join the judging panel as well. Who knows? But we're also trying to see if we can have the winners of these teams also be incorporated into some of the working groups that we have at MVA, which is a great opportunity, which in a single event, you can see how an international activity organized by the Moonville, I mean, is spearheaded by the Moon Village Association, allows for the national and regional coordinators of MVA to do a PR, receive public people and public members to come to an IMD event and have them funnel through into the IMD's top-down research organization. So you can kind of see that as a whole ecosystem we're trying to develop here, and hopefully we'll see more of that in other nations in the East and Southeast Asia as well.
I'm just so blown away with this what if competition, and I really, really wish. Is it online or is it offline? Like, how?
It's an offline. Yeah, we have the largest science museum in Korea, which is the Gwacheon National Science Museum. We also have a few rockets displayed there, and they're generously as our sponsor and host partner. So we'll be doing an offline.
Wow, it's a bummer. I mean, I really wanted to.
We can't go, right? We want to go.
Yeah.
And also I want to add a very interesting opportunity for everybody. I know this is affiliated with the MVA India local event for the IMT, but there are other bottom-up events happening that actually you guys can also participate in. And so this is especially for schools and universities out there who wants to operate a lunar rover, right? I mean, I think I want it. So we just released this, I think, a few days ago. So we have an event coming up, which is a telerobotics event for the IMD. So this is in partnership with an analog research station in Hawaii. So they have the lunar rover there, and they have kindly partnered with us, and we will be having a first come first serve basis, depending on how many requests we get from schools and universities to allow students to remotely operate the lunar rover and try it out. So if you have the time, please check our website on that. It's very exciting, and we are really happy to open this to everybody, not just for students in the United States, but this is open to any school and university, any student anywhere on earth. So that's very exciting. So please do sign up. Again, it's a first come first serve. Let's operate the rover.
And I just wish I was in school. I was still in school, because I know we get that opportunity, but as a school student, the excitement level will be like way beyond like what I'm feeling, or what if even if I do it online or something, like the excitement level will be so different. Wow, I should ask my brother to do it. I should really. No, I'm not. No. He doesn't deserve that. But yeah.
No, but I do teach some astronomy in some schools, and I definitely am going to announce about the opportunity because I think the students will be so excited. And just like talking about seeing the moon or just seeing a telescope, we hear so much of excitement in their voices. I think something like you just said will just blow their minds.
Exactly. And for the audience who are listening, please check down on our description box, and we will be definitely linking all this information there, and you can definitely sign up. Oh, by the time this podcast goes out, I think the registrations will be closing up, but still, if there are any openings out there, or if you're curious to know more about Moon Village Association, or if you want to get engaged with them, their activities and all, please do check down on the description box for the links, and we will be more than happy to lead you guys to MVA. And I'm just still so stuck with this all information about IMD celebration. I'm so excited, actually. Wow, and
it is extremely exciting. And I'm so glad that Bernadette actually brought out the history, that it is the first time that we will be celebrating it on the 20th of July, because before that we used to celebrate it on a different day, and NASA used to celebrate this as the Observe the Moon Day, just but since last year that it's a big feat that you all achieved, and now that we internationally be able to celebrate on the same day, something so beautiful, and hopefully the start of something beautiful as well.
Yeah, exactly. And as you are almost reaching towards the end of this podcast, I believe that the audience out there have learned quite a lot about Moon and also International Moon Day, and also about the Moon Village Association and what they're planning for this year, right? I mean, I just hope that it will be a very good event for all the regions, like from Korea to India to any other country who are doing these celebrations. And I really hope again in next year, in 23 July 20th, we will upgrade all these versions and do a little more extra. And then eventually, like, it will be like a thing all over the world. Maybe, we get more countries getting involved with MVA and doing all these IMD celebrations, and it will be super cool to have all these actors coming together and doing all this. And it was really an amazing session. And thank you, Antonio and Bernadette, for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to host you both on behalf of MVA. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you have anything to share as the final remarks?
Bernadette?
I just wanted to thank you for inviting us and for giving us this opportunity to share with everybody the exciting events happening at MBA and how they can participate within MBA. And yes, please just do check out our website. You can also join as an individual member and join these working groups, join these events happening. And I'm really excited for all of us for what's coming out for us. We are the next generation going to the moon as well, right? So we are really the next generation, and we hope everybody, all of us, can experience it as well the coming decades. But yes, thank you so much, Space Smurfs, for inviting us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for such an interactive session. And I would say thank you to our audience as well, to listening to four spectacular people.
Yeah, and also now over to you, Antonio. Like, what are your final remarks on this?
Right. If you are watching this Space Smurfs podcast, then there is a very high probability that you're someone who's either a student or in the very early stage of your career. If you are, and if you're in the space sector, you're in for a very exciting time, because we're seeing so much new developments in space. There's a very high possibility that quite a few of you listening to this podcast will have a chance to go to space, and especially to the moon. So I would like to as they already mentioned, thank you for all the efforts that you have put into developing the space sector. I look forward so much into seeing how your professional careers will develop in the years to come. If there's any questions that you might have, my email inbox as well as my Instagram is always open for questions or any inquiries or any information that you might want to learn more about space. Both Bernadette and myself are involved in many different organizations that work in the space sector, especially non-governmental organizations. So if there's any questions about how you want to be involved in space, and you don't have to be an engineer. I get so many questions about, I'm not an aerospace engineer. How can I be, am I allowed to be in the space sector? Yes, you can. Yeah. In this economy, in this era, you can be a businessman, you can be an artist, you can be a policymaker. You have a chance, you have space in the space sector. So please please join.
Yeah. I mean, you can choose your own avatar in space. I mean, that's the new tagline that I'm going along. It's yeah, it's really cool to listen about all these activities. And again, even though Antonio mentioned that, you can reach out to both Bernadette and Antonio, I would like to mention again that on 23rd July, 6:30 p.m. IST, we will be having the Instagram session, and you can directly get involved, engage with Antonio and Bernadette and ask your questions to them. And also, reach out to them on their Instagram or emails as well. So you can choose your space avatars. Yes, I'm going with it again. So with that mentioned, we can conclude today's sessions, and we will see you on episode 11, which will be coming out soon. Until then, this is your host, Aleena.
And this is your host, Pooja.
Signing off.
And
till then,
goodbye.
Keep smurfing. Bye-bye.